after Toby!
Tommy.
That's what I said.
Hey, welcome back to ScreenCrush. I'm Ryan Airy, and this is all of the Easter eggs, references, and little things you might have missed in Agatha All Along, Episode 6. Now, after last week's cliffhanger, we finally find out how Billy Maximoff came back. Now, it's a bit of a change from the comics, but don't worry, we're going to get into all of that material. Let's just dive right in and break this episode down. So this episode is titled Familiar by Thy Side, which is, of course, yet another line from the Ballad of the Witch's Road. But it's also a reference to this line from earlier in the season.
I'm Agatha Harkness. This is my familiar Toto.
Sir, what's a familiar? So a familiar is a creature that serves a witch. Now, they aren't actually animals, but they often take the appearance of animals, like black cats. Am I a familiar? I don't know what you are. So we open with William Kaplan's bar mitzvah, a Jewish rite of passage that occurs at age 13. And remember, earlier this season, Billy said,
Well, it happened to me at 13 too.
Also, notice how it's listed as a magic mitzvah on the program. It's a nice touch, which speaks to the bar mitzvah's theme, which is magic. As we'll see later, Billy Kaplan had a huge interest in magic. Now, next we're introduced to William's birth parents, Jeff and Rebecca Kaplan. So, both in the comics and in this show, they are William's actual birth parents. They're the ones who raised him and who he shares his actual DNA with. Wanda and Vision are only his parents in a metaphysical soul way. So, a friend of the channel and Jewish scholar, Ryan Adams, tweeted some very interesting information about this Torah portion that he reads. It's from Leviticus chapter 10, where Aaron's sons offer a strange fire to the Lord and then are consumed by it, killing them. Essentially, this passage is about two brothers playing with powers they do not understand, similar to Billy resurrecting himself in this episode. Ryan also told me that there is a belief that they were not killed as punishment, but instead taken up to heaven, essentially that they died so then they could live. Again, this is a perfect mirror to what happens to Billy Maximoff's soul in this episode. Geez, this show is awesome. It really is. Now, the decorations at his bar mitzvah feature the moon, just like all of the entrances to the trials. This is fitting because several pieces of furniture and decor from Billy's room show up in the trials, but we're going to get to that in just a bit. Lily is inside the palm reading tent because, of course, she wasn't making that much money as a psychic.
Your bank statement will say Lilia's leggings, but that's just my side hustle.
Actually, you know what? I saw a tweet about that, and let me find it for you. Person? This is dead air. I know. I'm sorry. I do this all the time. I'll see like a tweet or like a reel on Facebook or an article on ScreenCrush.com or a recipe or something, and I think, oh, I want to save that for later. Oh yeah, I do the same thing. I got like a million tabs open on my phone, and then I eventually accidentally close it or override it or something. Exactly, and I bet all of you do that too. You're trying to save recipes or videos or articles or walkthroughs, and you don't want to crowd out your bookmarks, so then you just end up losing them. But now I've got a better idea. Let's start using Keep It. Keep It? What's that? Keep It is an incredibly easy app that makes it easy for you to keep your saved content in one place. And whenever you want to save something, you just share it to the Keep It app and then add it to your favorite category. I have categories for ScreenCrush videos, Easter eggs, articles, reels, recipes, and game walkthroughs. I mean, especially recipes. I hate finding a recipe online that I like and then I lose it later on, then I have to try to find that same recipe or go through my history. Instead, Keep It streamlines digital organization into one very easy to use app. You won't have to ever struggle with your digital clutter again because Keep It simplifies everything into one place. And Keep It is absolutely free with no ads. This is genuinely one of the most useful apps we've ever advertised on the channel. It also allows me to save tweets with Easter eggs that you guys send me, and I don't have to worry about sending like screenshots from my phone or my desktop. It's just all stored in one place. You can also add friends or loved ones so you can share keeps together, like if you are sharing recipes or vacation ideas or even links to ScreenCrush videos. I highly recommend you try this app. It has streamlined my life so much. So click our link in the description. You will not regret it. Now, behind Billy, there are two tapestries displaying tarot cards. The first is the Wheel of Fortune. The Wheel of Fortune represents cyclical change, and the nature of that change is dependent on whether or not it's reversed or upright. Because this is a tapestry and the card isn't actually played, we can read it either way, as good luck or bad luck. And that's really fitting because, you know, very bad luck for William, but very good luck for Billy. The second card is the Tower, which Lilia also references.
The tower reversed.
And we actually see it reversed when they show Billy upside down in the crystal ball. Now, major shout out to the Loremonger from our Discord channel. And by the way, guys, we have a Discord. It's so much fun. We geek out about Agatha every night when episodes drop and other ScreenCrush and Marvel stuff. The links are below if you want to chat with me and the whole team and each other about this. It's a really fun community that we're building on there. Now, our Discord member, the Loremonger, created an amazing breakdown of all the tarot references. She said the Tower, when reverse points to internal transformation, suggests a delayed or avoiding disaster. It's a warning that the breakdown of old beliefs or systems is inevitable, but that resisting change could cause even more turmoil in the long run. In this case, the internal transformation is twofold. There's the obvious transformation of William into Billy, but there's also the transformation of Billy's personality. In WandaVision, Billy is very sweet and sensitive, and even the Billy we see pre-Witch's Road is extremely kind. But by the end of this episode, he's saying,
I'm not that nice.
Also, great catch by our intern Elias, his lifeline doesn't just split off. They're nearly parallel, representing their dual nature and personality differences. And you know what else splits apart? Chicken wings. No. Well, yeah, chicken wings split apart, but no, the sacred timeline splits apart. It could be that Billy entering William's body was one of the first branch events after the events of Loki Season 1. Now, it's important to note that a bar mitzvah marks a passage of time and transformation. It's when a boy becomes a man. Just as on this day, William Kaplan essentially leaves the earth, but he is replaced by a new person, Billy Maximoff. I should also note that the tarot cards behind her are the same tarot cards used as promotional images for this show. One of those cards clearly shows Billy and Tommy falling from the tower, mirroring their descent from the Tower of Westview and falling to Earth and finding new bodies. All of these tarot cards also feature the sigil in the corner, which is fitting because they're Lilia's tarot cards and she's the one who cast the sigil to begin with. This clue is in front of us all along. Now, as Billy leaves, he says,
Love the vibe in here, though. It's very early Argento.
Now he's referencing Dario Argento, an Italian film director. He directed films like Suspiria and Inferno, both of which were heavily visually inspired in episode 4. Both Suspiria and Inferno are part of his Three Mothers trilogy, featuring three witches who want to rule the world. It's also worth mentioning that tarot began in Italy in the 14th century, and Lilia is clearly using a lot of tarot imagery. Now, it turns out that the sigil we've been theorizing about is actually from Lilia, and notice as soon as she places it, she can't remember who he is.
Some kid left this in my tent.
Which kid?
I don't remember.
And that's because
The sigil works on the witch who cast it as well. That's why we don't use them as much. They're super irritating.
they're all forced to leave because
We've just been informed there's something happening with the anomaly in Westview.
now this is actually right after Agatha and Wanda were fighting. Notice on the radio they actually picked up some of the WandaVision broadcast.
My husband is indestructible head.
Now the car crash itself is symbolically very interesting because William is actually inadvertently killed by Wanda's magic. His parents were looking at the hex instead of the road. So in some ways, Wanda's responsible for her son finding a new body. Now in the comics, the twins' resurrection is way weirder than this. And this is because of various creators coming along over the years to put their various stamps on these characters. As we've talked about in past videos, Bill Mantlo and Rick Leonardi created a limited series where Wanda uses residual energy from Agatha's death to create her twins. And then later in West Coast Avengers, writer-artist John Byrne changed this to say that Wanda's kids were never real. They were shards of Mephisto's soul. And then Alan Heinberg's Young Avengers retconned this once again, saying that Wanda reconfiguring those shards of Mephisto's soul permanently altered them, so they were reincarnated into the bodies of two teenage boys, which is essentially what happens in the series, just without all that Mephisto stuff. Now, another thing to note is that the name Rio Vidal literally translates into River of Life, which could be a reference to the river Styx, the river that separated the earth and the underworld in Greek mythology. This ties into the theory that Rio is actually the MCU's incarnation of Mistress Death. So I wonder if she'll ever reference that William Kaplan started to cross this barrier of death, but then was pulled back by Billy's soul. Also, we've seen references to this car crash earlier in the show. In the credits, there's a newspaper talking about it. And we also had Detective Agnes's theory on how Wanda died.
There was a car wreck about an hour before time of death.
And it turns out she was right. The car crash in Eastview was connected to her death. Now, the cop that first arrives on the scene is Alice, you know, from before she got fired from her job.
Your old lieutenant convinced me to give you a shot, but you've been nothing but bad luck.
And this really shows how they're switching from Agatha as the main character to Billy as the main character. Now, while Agatha is technically the one who brought them together, Billy is the one who actually has history with them. We cut to Billy in this hospital, and I love this framing. It's like he's being watched from behind a screen. The only way he's been viewed up until this point. Literally everyone who wasn't in the anomaly only ever saw him on television, and his balloons are even green, red, and blue, the primary colors of an old tube television and the color of the glitch that they used during the credits of WandaVision. Also, I loved this little detail.
He's gonna make fun of it.
I'm doing my best here.
It's fine. Just Please don't fight.
Now this isn't just brilliant because it shows that he's still getting used to his powers. It also shows us how much this is, in fact, Billy Maximoff and not William Kaplan. Billy's interacting with them like they're also telepaths because he is used to being around telepaths like his mom. It doesn't even occur to him that other people aren't expecting him to read their minds and vice versa. I love all these callbacks to WandaVision. You guys know how much we love covering WandaVision on the channel, and that is why we made this Westview Neighborhood Watch shirt for our merch store. ScreenCrushMerch.com, where we design all the merch ourselves. We also have this Mephisto confirmed shirt and these really fun Agatha shirts. It'll be a gas. Get on losers. We're riding the witch's road. And of course, our brand new Billy All Along shirt. Guys, we love making Marvel parody merch for you. You can find links for all of these below. Check out our store. It really does support our channel. Thanks for watching. So when we cut to his house, we get another TV metaphor. The door has a small window that looks like a TV screen. And when it opens, Billy is literally stepping into the real world, like a less creepy version of Samara. Now, this is also a visual reference to The Wizard of Oz, when Dorothy first walks out of the sepia world of her Kansas home into the colorful world of Oz. As we're going to talk about later, the show possesses many parallels and metaphors and callbacks to The Wizard of Oz. Now, the dog here doesn't recognize him because he knows that he is an imposter. This is Billy dressed up as William. Yeah, dogs know stuff. Yeah, you do. High five. Now, when Billy couldn't block out the sounds of his parents,
Please stop. Please stop. Please just stop.
it reminded us of this scene from X2.
Hands to the shelter.
We cut to Billy's room and there are a lot of references in here. First of all, we see a poster of Houdini, the famous magician from the turn of the 20th century. This shows us that William had a strong interest in magic, which is why he had a magic-themed bar mitzvah, but also Harry Houdini was Jewish, which would also make him an inspiration for young Jewish magician William Kaplan. Now, there's also a print depicting the land of Cockaigne. Cockaigne? No, Cockaigne. It's a medieval mythical land run by gluttony, and this guy up here is actually a wizard. Now, this illustration is actually from Gargantua and Pantagruel, a 16th century satire primarily aimed at Emperor Charles V. The titular characters were giants who lived extremely hedonistic and gluttonous lives. These two prints referring to gluttony make me think that deep down, maybe Billy really does want more power. Now, we see a poster for Assateague Island in the same style as this poster from last episode, and the Eastview flag that was above the door. And all throughout his bedroom, we're going to see a lot of things here that made it into the trials. There is an Alice in Wonderland poster, a reference to how Billy fell down the rabbit hole by entering the Witch's Road. There's a Wonderful Wizard of Oz poster, which is actually different from the movie. This is actually the cover of the book, The Wonderful Wizard of Oz. And right here, there are also references to Wizard of Oz characters on the shelves. We see Dorothy, the Wicked Witch of the West, the Lion, and the Scarecrow. Now, since the first episode of this show, we have talked about the similarities here to The Wizard of Oz, from the Yellow Brick Road crime tape, to the Witch's Road being a path through the woods, even to Herb quoting this song.
Oh, she's really most sincerely dead.
Which actually I didn't catch. Somebody on our Discord told me that and I was really embarrassed that I missed it. And then we see this poster for Narnia, another mythical land that children fall into where they lead off onto adventures, similar to what happens to Billy. And we see this poster for the Black Cauldron. So all of this is showing that William Kaplan's tastes are very much geared towards sword and sorcery style adventures. Now, the inclusion of the Black Cauldron may just seem like they're pulling from like the random Disney catalog, but this is actually an interesting choice for a few reasons. One, it was the first Disney animated film to be PG. It scared the living hell out of me when I was a kid. Now, I do think this movie poster could be foreshadowing eventual plots for this show, but for now, I just want to note that the titular Black Cauldron was owned by 3 terrifying witches, like the Mother Maiden Crone locket that Agatha wears. The movie also features a pig that has psychic powers and can detect this Black Cauldron. I can't help but see some parallels here between the pig's abilities and Billy's, with Billy having these instinctual powers that he can't actually control. I also think there's some connection here to how Agatha referred to him as Pet in the first few episodes, and Henwin the pig being an actual pet. Now, we also see a poster for Bedknobs and Broomsticks, another Disney classic about a witch taking children on a magical journey to another land, essentially what the Coven does with Billy. And the poster next to that is for a fictional movie called The Goofballs. Now, this is a clear nod to this poster from The Goonies. We have the same font, some kids in the foreground, and a pirate ship. Now, The Goonies was an inspiration for the original draft of WandaVision's final episode, where the twins, Monica and Ralph Boner, would have snuck into Agatha's house to find the Darkhold, and then they fought Senor Scratchy.
That rabbit's got a vicious streak a mile wide. It's a killer.
This is all according to WandaVision's original director Matt Shakman, who told the Fat Man Beyond podcast that this was a, quote, Goonies set piece. Also, look, Billy has the same moon chandelier that we saw in episode 3. So when Billy says,
My name is William Kaplan,
there are actually 2 mirrors to show that while he might present this way on the outside, Billy is still on the inside. This is a visualization of his split. So we enter Billy's updated bedroom, and like Dorothy stepping from Kansas into Oz, it looks completely different. Gone are the posters related to children's movies, and now they've been replaced by horror films. There's Jennifer's Body, a beloved cult classic in the queer community.
Thought you only murdered boys. I go both ways.
There's Saw, which we mentioned in episode 3. The basic premise of Saw is that people are up against a ticking clock or they die, much like the trials on the road. There's also the 1974 version of Carrie, which was another heavy visual reference in the 1970s trial. And there's The Craft, the 90s drama about teen witches, which we actually see in the credits. Billy's bedroom is a clear reflection of how he's grown up, and we even see this in the end credits. The first half of the credits is littered with older witch references, typically more associated with children, like The Wizard of Oz. But the second half actually has horror witches like The Craft. There are also several pieces of decor in the trials that are pulled directly from this room. For example, these triangle lights were in Agatha's trial, and this Fleetwood Mac poster is in Alice's trial. Also, I gotta point out the Evanescence Fallen album poster. It is a classic emo teen album. Then we see these newspaper clippings, some of which we also saw in the credits, like examining the Red Dome anomaly and its impact. Then we find out that SWORD has been covering up the Westview incident.
I thought that turned out to be some Avengers training exercise gone wrong.
Now, it appears as if for years, SWORD and the entire US government have been a lot more conniving behind the scenes. This was first explored in WandaVision with Tyler Hayward illegally resurrecting the Vision, and then we saw more of this in Wakanda Forever and Falcon and the Winter Soldier with Valentina Allegra de Fontaine. And with the Thunderbolts coming out next year, I wouldn't be surprised if we hear about this Westview cover-up again. Billy was watching one of Jennifer's videos, and I just want to point out that based on the view count, her business was not doing well. Billy recognizes the ruins, and we get the return of Ralph Boner from WandaVision. And in case you don't remember, Ralph was Agatha's husband and also took on the mantle of Pietro. And this was, of course, a cheeky reference to actor Evan Peters playing Quicksilver in the Fox X-Men films. And we also love that Teddy goes with him for scary dog privileges. Also, there's another horror reference. Ralph is dressed as the killer from I Know What You Did Last Summer. And when Ralph says this,
it was like watching yourself on TV inside your own head.
It sounds a lot like the sunken place from Get Out. He also says,
wake up every hour in the middle of the night screaming,
which may be a reference to this phenomenon from WandaVision.
We have your nightmares.
Now, it's great that we see how both Wanda and Agatha deeply traumatize these people. I'm glad that they're not softening the impact of that. Ralph says,
she called me her husband, but I was her puppet.
A nod to the running gag in WandaVision.
The only way Ralph would remember our anniversary is if there was a beer named June 2nd.
He also says,
I have this really nice lady hostage in my attic.
A reference to this scene between him and Monica.
This is my man cave. Place to chillax, while the missus is stirring up trouble.
Now, one thing I find really interesting is that nobody outside of Westview knows what actually happened in the Hex, but everybody seems to know that Wanda is dead. So I'm curious how they know and what the story SWORD spun around here. He also says,
left my entire Blu-ray collection behind.
And in his house, we see a collection of Blu-rays. He also mentions a Bowflex, which remember, Star-Lord also promised that he would start using.
Agatha can keep my Bowflex.
I'm gonna get a Bowflex. I'm gonna commit.
Also, I'm glad to see that Ralph is still acting.
I'll give you half off tickets to my one-man show in Paramus.
Now, when Billy goes back to his house, his parents say,
wouldn't know Eddie?
So in the comics, Hulkling is actually named Teddy. Now, clearly these names are really similar, so I still think this could be our MCU Hulkling. But my guess is that they changed the name because this will be the MCU's version of Hulkling that's going to differ from the comic version of the character. Also, Jeff says,
oh man, I made that pot roast you like so much. I even made the potatoes in the air fryer. They're super crispy.
A callback to his cooking prowess in episode 3.
It heats water to a specific temperature so you can cook your meat evenly. My dad loves his.
So when Billy goes up to his room, there is a corkboard with a ton of stuff about the sigil. Now I want to point out this note in particular. It says, destructible sigils, activated by being destroyed, creates a burst of energy that gives the sigil power. Write, carve, or singe sigil onto paper, wood, food, or object and destroy by fire or force. And we don't actually see Billy destroy the sigil until the end of this episode. Maybe the sigil simply wouldn't allow him to reveal his identity because Lilia was not allowed to remember who Billy was. And it's actually just now that the protection sigil is actually activating. This could explain why he was vulnerable on the road. After all, he almost died. Also behind Billy is the Moon Tarot card. Now this is obviously a reference to all the moon imagery throughout the trial.
Yeah, I got an Easter egg.
Oh, that's cute, buddy. What's your little Easter egg?
Well, yeah, when Billy got home, the dog barked at him, and on the bottom of the Moon Tarot card, there are 2 dogs barking, and that symbolizes both life and death. It's also thought that dogs can see souls, so the dog did not recognize this new soul inside William's body.
How did you know all that?
Yeah, dude, I know a lot about dogs. What's the big deal?
Then Billy starts searching for information on Agatha Harkness and the Witch's Road on his computer, which we also see in the credits. We also see a site titled Witches and Aging that says some witches choose to stop again at a certain point, staying roughly 30 years old visually for hundreds of years. Now obviously Agatha looks way younger than her years. I don't think she's 30. After all, Kathryn Hahn is 51, and I'm really enjoying seeing older women on screen since they don't often get that kind of opportunity in Hollywood. But I think that Jennifer is actually stuck at 30. Sashir Zameda is in her 30s, and honestly, she looks even younger to me. We see a post claiming people survived the Salem witch trials, a clear reference to the flashback that we saw in WandaVision. And in this old-timey photo, she's also wearing the Mother Maiden Crone pendant that she wears throughout the entire series.
But why was she at all those disasters? Does she just got real bad luck?
Nope, my guess is she was there because she was dating Rio. We have theorized several times that Rio is actually the MCU's personification of death. So, if they were dating, it makes complete sense that Rio needs to be at these major disaster sites and Agatha was just along for the ride. Also, I loved that Agatha was Dolly Parton's Jolene. That also implies that she was a redhead at some point, and let me see that please. There's a reference from Brujopedia, a reference to brujeria, a form of witchcraft popular in Latin America. It's a mix of indigenous, African, and European practices that form a distinct practice on its own. On Brujopedia, we see a list of names. There's Abigail Adams, the former First Lady of the United States. She was also a fierce proponent of civil rights and the abolition of slavery, two tenets of the Ladies of Liberty. And it's also worth noting that the child who started the Salem witch trials was Abigail Williams. Now, as far as I can tell, the rest of the names on the list are all new to Marvel, which fits in with the lore that witches are not well documented. As Billy researches Agatha, his attention is caught by his Ballad of the Witches Road vinyl, which is the exact same vinyl that we saw in Alice's trial. In his book, Billy reads that at the end of the Witches Road, a witch may find what's missing. Now, this is clearly a reference to Tommy, but it could also reference Nicholas Scratch. Again, we really don't think he's dead because we heard his voice last episode, and Agatha doesn't know what happened to him. So instead of getting her powers at the end, she may instead find her son. Billy goes to Westview, now of course stopping in front of the house that was originally for Wanda and Vision. When he double checks the release spell, he has moon phases drawn all over his book. Now, moon magic is a particular type of witchcraft that believes the moon's phase affects the power and strength of the spell. We've seen this throughout the show, as well as with all the references to moon phases in the various trials. And then we find out that Teddy calls Billy his Black Heart. Now, up until now, we thought that the Black Heart on Lilia's list referenced Rio because of this line.
It's black, and it beats for you.
But it's actually been Billy all along, just like our Billy All Along t-shirt. So this also means that Rio is a true interloper in their coven. She is not supposed to be there. So this scene of Billy walking up to Agatha's house is just like the scene of the sword agent entering the Hex in WandaVision. When Billy sneaks into her house, he finds the Mother Maiden Crone pin in a little baggie. Now, in WandaVision, Agatha wears that pin at all times, including in the final fight. So my guess is that they took her clothes and costume for evidence at some point, and then this is how they returned the pin. And since then, Agatha has not worn it again. Also, Agatha is wearing a Boner family reunion shirt that she must have found in Ralph's house. So classic. And notice that the shirt says, pitching a tent.
Because people named Boner are excellent campers. Hilarious!
Exactly. So this is actually the exact same scene from the first episode, but now we're seeing it as it actually happened, not as Agatha saw it. And it really shows the strength of Wanda's spell, because Agatha isn't only visually seeing different things, but she is hearing completely different things. In the original scene, Billy was pretty bratty, but here he's as polite as you can be after trying to rob someone. Now, after the real scene, we cut back to the witch's road. Agatha crawling out of the mud is a reference to the creature from the Black Lagoon. Look, her hands even looked webbed here because of the mud. It could also be a reference to the plethora of zombie movies featuring zombies crawling out of their graves.
Yeah, why is she the only one who crawls out?
Well, Agatha can't die. She says it in the first episode.
You can't kill me. It's not allowed.
And I'm pretty sure that is because of Wanda's spell. In Infinity War, Doctor Strange says,
"You'll find removing a dead man's spell troublesome."
And in the last episode, we saw Agatha absorb Alice's power, but she couldn't keep that power. She may have broken out of the mind aspect of Wanda's spell, but she still deals with the physical aspects. That includes immortality, so she can't off herself and just be done with it. Agatha says,
"A sigil. What's that? Power is what I'm missing." Hardly.
And I want to make it clear, Billy has been manipulating this coven the whole time. He's been pretending to be relatively clueless so they would trust him. In reality, he's known who he is the entire time. He may have even known what he was capable of. Now in the comics, he discovers his powers after nearly killing a school bully. So I'm very curious about whether or not this is the first time his powers have actually shown themselves, or if he always knew that he had this in the bag. I also love the acting choices here from Kathryn Hahn in this scene.
what you did was... but life goes on. Yours, anyway.
We've seen a softer side of her in the last few episodes, but she was obviously extremely triggered by the reappearance of her mother, and no one believed that she couldn't control her power.
Don't lie to me.
So I'm really glad that she has reverted to this mean, callous version of herself. The villain persona was created to protect herself, and once she felt threatened, she went right back into that protective shell. It also just makes her into a more fun and realistic villain. In the past, Marvel's changed villains at the drop of a hat, so I'm glad we actually have a back and forth with her. He says,
"I'm not like you,"
which is exactly what Wanda said to Agatha.
"I'm not what you say I am."
Agatha says,
"I just gotta know, where did you come by this fresh body you're wearing?"
And this is an amazingly consistent characterization. In WandaVision, Agatha didn't just want Wanda's powers, she wanted to know how she created the Hex.
"I need you to tell me how you did this."
She could have taken her powers at any time, but instead, she decided to go through an episode's worth of trauma just to learn how Wanda's magic worked. She's very intellectually curious.
Years of study to achieve even the smallest convincing illusion.
And then Agatha says,
"Don't you dare feel guilty about your talent."
Which is definitely something she tells herself. Her powers are taboo even among witches, and even in this villainous state, she does not want Billy to feel the same shame that she felt. She also says,
"So you broke the rules, big deal."
Which is actually a reference to Multiverse of Madness.
"Possessing a dead body is forbidden."
I also love the reveal that he can't control his powers.
I can't do it on command.
He can't do it on command.
We also see elements of this with Wanda in the MCU, especially in Age of Ultron. Her powers were very emotion-based and caused giant bursts when she was sad or angry. Agatha says,
"You're after Toby!"
Tommy.
That's what I said.
which is also a nod to the fact that she could not remember Sharon's name.
Who's Sharon?
Billy says,
I can sense him, I just can't find him.
which is also what Wanda felt in the post-credits of WandaVision. So I am curious if he is in this universe. Wanda says,
"Gosh, you really are a Maximoff. Otherwise, none of this would be nearly as dramatic."
which is pretty funny given that she made her own intro music for her own reveal.
It's been Agatha all along.
And then they turn to walk down the road, which is now covered in yellow leaves. This is a clear reference to the yellow brick road from The Wizard of Oz, which of course William Kaplan loved. God, what a great episode. I loved finding out more about Billy. I'm really happy they brought him back in this way. It's way simpler than in the comics, and we cannot wait for next week. Quick reminder that we are going on an 11-city tour starting with Boston on November 14th. We cannot wait to meet you guys, geek out about Marvel and Star Wars, and show you all the stuff that they won't let us put on YouTube. Links for that and our Discord server are below. The Discord's also a lot of fun. I'm on there all the time.
Join us.
Huge shout out to Brianna McLarty who wrote this episode. You can find her social links below. So what did you guys think of the episode? Let me know your thoughts down in the comments or at me on Twitter. And if it's your first time here, welcome to the channel. Please subscribe and smash that bell for alerts. For ScreenCrush, I'm Ryan Airy.